Revolutionary greetings. Abaro Boye. Abari Ghani. This Haki Shakur coming back at you once again with this new video, new topic. In the springtime, 2015, 50 years ADM after the death of Malcolm. And this video gonna be real short and brief. This video is basically going to be touching on, suppressed rebellions and suppressed rebellions of Virginia. And the reason why I'm making this video is because I just want to get the message across and the point across to our people out there that, new African people, black people in the North America, the Empire of the United States of America. I just want to give you a brief, quick history on the other side, because a lot of people think it's one side of New Africans that just was so passive and, just sat back and just took, the dehumanization and the, cruelty and the, repression and oppression and, terrorism of this United States government and its Euro-American citizens, throughout history. They think it's just one side of us that's always marching and always just, passive. The passive Negro, if that's what you want to call them. Or the passive nigga, if that's what you want to call them also. But this is a focus on, especially in this pivotal time, 2015, where New African males and New African people are being shot down brutally and savagely by these Gestapo pigs, these, military troops of the United States of a government called, the law enforcement agencies across the, country, man. And, I came up with this quote that, that a lot of our people just need to understand, man. It's like, there wasn't there's always two sides of our people, since our history here in this country. One of us was a rebellious, combatant of the get down, a rebellious slave that fought back, that fought for his freedom. And they did that by any means necessary. Physically, they fought back. And this is what this video is going to be, based on, to get this message across our people. Like, if you want something to stop, you're going to have to take some extreme measures to stop it. Put it like that. When we talking about this police issue and this police brutality on our people. So I'm just going to lay down some history on where I come from, the land of the rebellion, the Commonwealth of Virginia, where, 84 rebellions took place here, man. Whether they were suppressed, stopped, told on, or it fully went through, but, at the end of the day, they tried to get free. Put it like that. You see what I'm saying? They fought for their freedom. They tried to liberate their people. And I just want to give a shout out to the, the 150 years, of emancipation of our ancestors that took place here in Richmond, Virginia, a couple of weeks ago. And, it was a beautiful thing at the African burial grounds and throughout the city to commemorate our ancestors, man. It was a beautiful thing that I attended, and, with my comrade. And, I enjoyed myself on the African burial ground. So I want to give a shout out to my ancestors, man, that were liberated on April 4th, 1865 by the colored troops, and it was a beautiful thing, man, to meet our people from all, walks of life at the African burial grounds, even from West Africa, man. I met people from West Africa at the African burial ground, so it was good to conjugate. So I just want to, commemorate my ancestors, and, I enjoy myself. But it's this quote I came up with, and the quote is, sometimes in order to stop the hunt, the hunter must be hunted. And I think this is a prime example of some rebellions that y'all should research to understand that, man. Sometimes, man, we gotta fight. You gotta fight back. Period. Gotta fight back in order to stop the, brutalization and the dehumanization and the murders of our people, man. We still struggling trying to get free. So let me just, hurry and get rolling to this video. August 3rd Collective, August 3rd Collective South represented right here in New African District. So let me just go ahead and get right into it, man. This name of this video is The Untold Rebellion of Mingoe in Virginia. That's the name of this video. A lot of people never heard this story before, so I guess I'm gonna be the person that put it out there because online I don't really see nothing about it. So let me go ahead and get into it. And this is a two-part video. Second part of the video is very interesting because I'm gonna go in detail on another part of history in Richmond, Virginia that people might not know about, and people I know my people across the United States of America don't know about, is something that I deem that you can connect with what's going on also with our people being killed and these teenagers being killed, is the stealing of the bodies and stealing organs. So the second part of this video is going to be about the black bodies that they were stealing out of the graves, whether they were from the slave graveyards, and I hate to call my people slaves, but the slave where our ancestors were enslaved, where they were buried, they enslaved, bodies were being took up out these graves. You know what I'm saying? And was used for, some legitimate crazy type shit, like for cadavers and experiments. So I'm gonna try to make this connection on the organ harvesting and trace it back to where I see the first traces of this type of thing going on in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm pretty sure it was going on out through the South, is the stealing of black bodies, grave robbing, and stealing our ancestors' bodies out the graves and was selling them. It was a market for selling bodies to experiment on them. So I'm gonna get into that. I ain't gonna get too much. I'm gonna get to that in a second. And this is very interesting. A lot of our stuff can be traced back to slavery, right before slavery ended. You see what I'm saying? And I'm gonna get to that point in a second. But let me go ahead and get to these rebellions real fast. Man, our people, especially here in Virginia, man, I think that, a lot of people need to start paying homage to Virginia, man, because this was the land of the rebellion, the land of the revolt, the land of the get back, the land of the retaliation and revenge. You see what I'm saying? The struggle to get free, the struggle to, to gain Uhuru Sasa. You see what I'm saying? This is the land. Like, man, there's so many rebellions that took here, we're all through the South. I ain't gonna leave out the South or the Black Belt. So many rebellions that have been taken place or tried to, our ancestors tried to put them in effect, but they may not have went all the way through. That's all through the South. A lot of this stuff ain't get recorded. You see what I'm saying? A lot of stuff was destroyed on these rebellions. It's a lot of stuff that took place that we don't even know to this date that took place because we don't have no oral record of it, or we don't have no physical record of it. But I managed to scrape this up from a comrade, rest in peace, Fahim RBG Ali. I got a little bit of this information from him, so I thought I would, it'll be a great idea to put it out there, and this is about where I come from. Another revolutionary, what I'm saying, besides Gabriel Prosser and Nat Turner, Mingoe. So let me go ahead and get right into it, man. This took place in like Middlesex County, Virginia. Like a lot of these rebellions took, on the plantation across Virginia, the upper South. The Untold Rebellion of Mingoe in Virginia, 1691. Large numbers of slaves ravaged plantations. And, I just got to give a salutation out to Mingoe and his comrades. A slave named Mingoe, who had fled his master in Middlesex County, Virginia, gathered a large number of followers and ravaged plantations, particularly in Rappahannock County. These Negroes not only took cattle and hogs, but 2 guns, a carbine, and other things. What became of this incident, of this rebellion, was not recorded. And this is from the Miss Order book, Middlesex County, 1680 to 1694. Mingoe Rebellion background. According to several historians, John Nickerson, a co-conspirator, almost certainly included the slaves Lawrence and Mingoe, as well as a white servant named Richard Wilkins. In 1689, these men, perhaps inspired by Nickerson's earlier plans, escaped from Wormley's plantation, and having acquired some followers from the neighborhood, spent the next 2 years raiding the estates of the Rappahannock County and stealing livestock from the local planters. In 1691, the depredations of these three men were the source of a greater concern, as they stole several firearms, encouraging local officials to increase their efforts to capture their outlaws. All three were tried in the courts of Middlesex County. Mingoe was sentenced to 39 lashes, while Wilkinson's term of indenture was extended by 5 years. Because Lawrence was captured while in possession of a gun, he was charged as a felon and held in county jail until he could receive his sentence from Virginia's General Court. The outcome of his case is not known, but according to historians Anthony S. Parent Jr., it is probable that as a slave found with a gun, he was hanged. Because Nickerson and his followers' plans were uncovered before they could be set in motion, it could be argued that the conspiracy was of a little historical importance. However, it is instructive to place Nickerson's plot within the wider picture of racial politics of the late 17th century in Virginia. Throughout the previous 50 years, cooperation was common between white servants and black slaves, as legal definitions of slavery and servitude were vague and inconsistent, were moved to make common cause against the colony's elite, particularly their own masters. Following the Bacon's Rebellion in 1676 to 1677, though colonial legal codes were adjusted in order to draw obvious distinctions between laborers of European descent and those of African heritage, thus to a large extent encouraging poor whites to identify themselves more with planters than with non-whites of their own class. Although servants and slaves continued to work together as plantation laborers until well into the 18th century, racial identity soon came to unrank the class solidarity in instances of interracial labor. Resistance became less and less common. John Nickerson conspiracy may well have been the last true interracial conspiracy in the history of the colonial Virginia. This is the timeline of the John Nickerson resistance and the Mingoe resistance. In 1687, John Nickerson is arrested by Middlesex County authorities and charged with leading a conspiracy of servants and slaves on Ralph Wormley plantation. The court decision is recorded in Middlesex County order book, but his fate remains unknown. 1689, the second resistance and rebellion to try to take place on Wormley's plantation was two slaves, Mingoe and his comrade Lawrence, and a servant named Richard Wilkins escaped from Ralph Wormley's estate in Middlesex County. They gathered followers and for 2 years raided plantations of Rappahannock County, stealing livestock, arms, ammunition, and goods. Later on, Mingoe and Lawrence are captured and tried in Middlesex County Court for the theft of firearms. Little is known that what happened and what took place after this rebellion was, stopped, suppressed, and these comrades captured. It is believed that Mingoe was hanged, and they believe that Lawrence was hanged. And the whereabouts of Richard Wilkinson afterwards is unknown. From what is told in the stories that perhaps he was sold into more, where he was given more indentured service time. And let me make this a clear point about this indentured servant thing and slavery. To be honest with you, the European indentured servants and indentured service period, the Europeans were treated better than the blacks. Period. I don't care what it is. We all know this. Whites have always been treated better than blacks. So when I look at the indentured service thing, like, indentured servant means something else to a new African and a black. You see what I'm saying? So indentured service to a black, a new African, is slavery. Period. You're a slave. Because you wasn't getting paid nothing. You were getting paid low wage. The ones that were indentured service that were black were being paid garbage wages. So they might as well have been a slave who got paid, who did labor for no pay. So that's the same thing. It's equal. You see what I'm saying? So when you hear me mention indentured service, that's still slavery when we talking about a new African and a black person here in the hills of North America. Don't get it twisted. Indentured servant and a slave is the same thing if your skin is melanated. Period. So don't get it twisted and think like, Because a lot of historians, European historians, try to make it like, oh, he's a servant, so that means he was doing good. In some cases, a black maid was doing a little better than a field slave. You see what I'm saying? But at the same time, they were doing the same work. They were out on the plantation doing the same work. And they both were getting treated the same equally. And the white indentured servant, man, I ain't even really going to get too much into that. You know what I mean? Because they were treated better than our ancestors, period. Some European indentures might have been treated bad by their own kind, but, you know, that's oppression. You see what I'm saying? When you're dealing with this type of system called slavery. Now, let me move right on into these other rebellions. Remember what I told you. 84 rebellions took place in Virginia. This is the land of rebellion. Let me move right on along. So when you hear that word servants and it's pertaining to a black, just think that it's still the same as your ancestors that were enslaved. It's still slavery. Gloucester County Revolt. The Servants Plot. 1663. A group of servants and slaves met in the woods and planned an operation to collect arms and ammunition, and it was about 30 recruits, and they planned to march on the governor's mansion at Green Spring to demand their release from their indentures. They were betrayed by another servant for 5,000 pounds of tobacco and freedom, and 4 of these comrades of this revolt of the servants' plot were found guilty and hanged. And another thing that you're going to notice throughout all these rebellions, and these rebellions even down in further south, our comrades were always ratted out by their own kind, man. And it still stands today, man. So, like, you know, when you trace in your history, you're going to see a lot of traits that still consist to today. You see what I'm saying? Like this ratting thing, man. This ratting thing is crazy. Like, every time our ancestors, the ones that wanted to fight for independence, you know, self-determination and controlling their own destiny, they always get ratted out, man, by our own kind. And it's sickening, man. Let me move right on along. York County VA Revolt, 1661. 40 comrades, 40 servants, angered because of the way they were getting treated as far as their diet and their food and how the masters were treating them as far as their food. Instead of taking these slave masters to court, these 40 comrades conjugated together and came to plot to rebel against their master on the plantation in York County, Virginia. This rebellion and revolt was led by a servant called Isaac Friend. They planned to use armed force to secure their freedom, but they were betrayed and arrested, and some of these servants were hung. You're gonna notice the same. You're gonna notice the same trend when I'm, talking about the rebellion. Moving right on along. Westmoreland County, Virginia, revolt of 1687. Slaves plan to rise up, eliminate whites, and destroy property across Westmoreland County, Virginia. See, as you see, man, it was armed struggle, armed rebellion, man. By any means necessary to get free. Moving right on along to Middlesex County, Virginia. The 7022. Slaves, mulattoes, and free blacks plan to rebel for freedom and independence and to set up an independent state. 7 slaves were caught, sentenced, and sold and transported out of the colony of Virginia. And by them being sold out of, like, this is a thing they used to do in slavery too, when some of our ancestors used to rebel against the European slave master for freedom. They would sell some of these, comrades out of the colony of Virginia into the deeper South to a more horrible way and a horrible, conditions of slavery to get them away from the colony of Virginia, so they could suppress future rebellions. You see what I'm saying? So they didn't hang them all the time, but the majority of them got hung, of our ancestors that did try to fight for freedom and tried to escape. They hung some of them, but they sold some of them out of the colony of Virginia. And what's so unique about the Middlesex 7022 rebellion is you see the first signs of our people fighting for independence and setting up a black, we're recognizing that they're our own people and they wanted their own nation and they wanted their own state within, the colony or within the United States South. They wanted their own country, their own state. And this is an eye-opener about this Middlesex, Virginia slave revolt, because they planned, their whole plan was to fight for independence and to set up an independent state. And you notice that with Gabriel Prosser, which we deem as a new African revolutionary nationalist, and if some people, you can call him a Pan-Africanist, because he wanted to set up a black nation. Him and Nat Turner. You see what I'm saying? So that would make this 722 rebellion very interesting. Y'all should do y'all research on that. Move right on along to the last and final one that I want to touch on is the Norfolk VA slave revolt of 1731. Virginia slaves planned in the winter of 1731. Their plot was to ravage Norfolk, Virginia, raid Norfolk, Virginia plantations, and to gather arms where they got arms, and when they gathered up all these arms and the plot was ready to take place and it was ready to get free, set themselves free and attack the slave masters, it got discovered, and the ringleaders of this rebellion were jailed. Several were hanged. Norfolk slaves and this rebellion were reported had stretched out to Princess Anne County, and as many as 5 other counties in Virginia of new African black people were going to take place in this rebellion. So this was about to be a large rebellion of total revolution. You see what I'm saying? Norfolk, Virginia, and 5 other counties of comrades were armed and ready to attack the beast, attack the slave master, attack the imperialists, attack the colonialists, to set themselves free, to get free out of slavery, man. So I just want to give a salutation and a solid move to all these comrades who sacrificed their lives. These are real martyrs that sacrificed their lives for freedom, man, across the colony in the Commonwealth of Virginia during this period of slavery. So I just want to give a big shout out to these people, and especially Mingoe. Pour some libation off of Mingoe. Start spreading Mingoe name around when you're doing your rituals or whatever, man. And let's invoke this great revolutionary called Mingoe and his comrade Lawrence of Middlesex County and the Rappahannock County rebellions, man. Mingoe is added to my trinity. This is the trinity. Gabriel Prosser, Nat Turner, and Mingoe are the trinity of our people that we need to come in contact with and evoke these, great men's spirits into today's society so that we can start, man, we got to fight back. Simple as that. If you want to change, all that typing on the computer, all that talking that, revolutionary talk on the computer, and, all this complaining on the computer every day, all day, man, this is not going to stop police from killing our new African nationals, man. This is not going to stop the police from killing African people across the United States of America, particularly in the South, and particularly across the United States, period. Talk and computer tapping is not going to stop these people from killing us. The only thing that's going to stop these people from killing us is you got to speak the language of the hunter. And that means you have to hunt him. Period. And don't take this literally. I'm just putting this out here because this is facts. You can't stop a historical killer by talking. You can't stop a historical killer by marching. You see what I'm saying? It's impossible, man. You can't reform a historical, racist, diseased killer. Period. It's impossible, man. And, we ain't even to the step of even doing new African communal organizing, man. You're not even safeguarding and patrolling your own backyard. So how are you going to stop police from killing your males, man, and your females? Because we can't leave the females out. They're getting killed too by the police. How can you stop something if you're not willing to stop it in your own community? Half of our people, I see you every day. You're not doing nothing offline. And I'm not knocking it. I'm not trying to point a lot of fingers at people, man. But let's be honest, man. You can't stop nothing if you're not doing it in your own community. So start organizing in your community, man. And I hate to say it, man. You got to speak the language of the hunter, man. Whether, defend yourself, period. Self-defense is the only way. Period. Period. Self-defense. Use your Second Amendment rights. Go get you some guns. Go get you some straps. Go get you some shotties. Start up a gun club. Start up a self-defense club. Start up a self-defense organization. And patrol and control your streets, man. Pac said it in one of his records. Control your streets. The Panthers always said this. Control your streets, man. It's time to get up for the get down, man. Become combatants of the get down. Period, man. Like, all this talking has to cease. So I just laid out to you some of the suppressed rebellions across the United States of America by our ancestors that took place, man. Like, our people wasn't passive people, man. We were fighters. We come from fighting blood. All across West Africa, we come from fighting blood. Period. We are people of resistance. We always resisted. You see what I'm saying? We always fought back. If we didn't like something, we didn't just protest it. We didn't just march. You know what I'm saying? Like that marching stuff, that's like new stuff, man. You know, that came around in the period where they was trying to use our people against us. They still trying to use our people against us with this marching thing. This marching thing, to my opinion, needs to be destroyed. I'm not knocking nobody who does it. That's your thing. Hey, you know, but marching needs to be destroyed. That's an outdated strategy that needs to be eliminated because we're supposed to learn from our ancestors and our elders that came before us, man. We're supposed to learn from the 60s and the 70s and correct their mistakes. Marching is one of their, it's effective to a certain extent, but we must learn that it was a failure. Marching is a failure. Period. So, you know, salutations to, man, all the revolts and all the rebellions and all the revolutionaries during slavery that fought back, man, that showed us an example of the true strength of our people, like Mingoe, Gabriel Prosser, and Nat Turner, man. And so, you know, that was the first half of the video. Here's the second half of the video. This is called the Virginia Lost History of Unearthing the Original Body Snatchers. You see what I'm saying? And what this is, black bodies were being stolen out of graves before the Civil War ended from our ancestors that were in slave graveyards and some of the other black graveyards around Virginia and around Richmond, Virginia, man. And this is a market that y'all need to go look up because I deem that it has connection to what they're still doing to black people today, which is still in there killing our new African nationals and stealing their organs. Period, man. And it goes like, and this is it right here, man. I dug this up because I seen it, you know, I've been hearing about this for a while, so I went back and tracked this information up. This is the Medical College of Virginia, class of 1900. And the guy, and it was sad about it, it's a black guy that was doing all this black market selling of our ancestral bodies to white folks, selling it to white folks and doing experiments on it for white folks. His name was Chris. And this is the story of Chris. Background. Uzi refers to Chris with an unassuming, almost familiar manner. He isn't Chris, the man responsible for the theft of hundreds of Richmond corpses, or Chris, the man responsible for the box of 100-year-old bones on the other side of Uzi. This article is written by this cat named Uzi's office. Just Chris as the award-winning. Hold on, let me skip on down on this because I want to get straight to the history of it. Here we go. In the history of MCV, disturbing. Baker was working. This Chris Baker. I think this is the name. Hold on. Here we go. This is from the Meet Me in the Bottom documentary also. On the heels of the documentary of Meet Me in the Bottom about the efforts to identify and memorialize a slave burial ground north of 17th Street Farmers Market in Shakur Bottom in Richmond, Virginia, Uzi began looking into rumors he had heard about MCV stealing corpses from the slave burial site. He discovered something just as disturbing. Baker, working for MCV, had stolen hundreds of bodies from black cemeteries after the Civil War and before the Civil War for training physicians. The majority of cadavers were African Americans, not because they were being targeted, but they were more vulnerable to grave site robbing, which I deem as bullcrap. It definitely was targeted. Blacks were being targeted as, dummies to experiment on. They always been experimenting on our people, man. Municipal cemeteries, they were open. They were unguarded, whereas white folk of the time were buried in churches or on their own property. And it was very difficult to steal them. In the 19th century, most states were without so-called anatomy laws, which allowed medical institutions to use unclaimed bodies for medical studies and dissection purposes. Without these laws, the only way medical colleges in Virginia could get bodies they needed was through a legal market in cadavers. Men called resurrectionists went out under cover of night and dug up recently buried on horseback. They carried the bodies into medical institutions or middlemen in Richmond. The cadaver business was booming. So you see the history, I'm aligned and connecting the history. Think about today in the organ harvesting of the bodies that these, the black teenagers that they killing today and harvesting their organs, and the black males they killing today harvesting their organs on the organ market, man. It's the same thing, man. You see how they was doing this? And the crazy, this cat Chris Baker was a black dude. So let me get right. I'm gonna post a picture of Chris Baker on my Instagram as soon as I upload this video so y'all can see what he looked like. Even before the Civil War, NCV and UVA competed for bodies. Virginia's big city, says Dr. Todd Savage, a professor at East Carolina University who specialized in African American medical history. In the mid-1800s, Charlottesville was a rural with a tiny population, which meant a dearth of cadavers for student training because Richmond had a large number of unguarded graves and was central to the domestic slave trade on the East Coast and Upper South. The city became a ground zero source for cadaver markets. Thousands of bodies were stolen from Richmond black cemeteries, sold to medical schools, including institutions outside the state. See, they were selling these bodies outside the state also, such as University of Pennsylvania. MCV was no different, and to handle its dirty work for medical college relied on this black cat named Chris Baker. Utsi first brushed with Baker was in 2004, shortly after arriving at VCU. During the orientation for new professors, Utsi was shown an old photograph of MCV medical students for the turn of the century. Among the baby-faced white doctoral students was an old black man standing in the corner. And I'm thinking, this black guy must have some interesting stories to tell us what Utsi recalls. Even then I'm thinking he must know where all the bodies are buried literally. It was Baker who began working for MCV in 1860 as far as Utsi can tell. It's unclear if Baker was purchased by the school or hired as a freeman. Baker lived with his family in the basement of the MCV Egyptian building and department. This is where they used to take the mummies from the Egyptian mummies and start, this is where they took all the archaeological evidence of the mummies and stuff. Like here in Richmond, Virginia, the MCV, which they changed the name now, they got an Egyptian department where mainly all these archaeologists used to take all the work that they used to steal out of Egypt and brought here from Africa, man. This is one of the main places where they used to take this stuff, man. Baker lived there until his death in 1919. Baker's duties included obtaining corpses either personally or by hiring others, keeping abreast deaths in the black community. After snatching the bodies, he soaked them in vats of chemicals for preservation until they reached the classroom. If the body was too decomposed for dissection, the flesh from the cadaver bones were removed and used for other medical research. The 1890 census lists Baker's occupation as anatomical man. In white society, he was respected, more educated in anatomy than most doctors at the college. Utsi says it even helped determine which students graduated for NCV during his time. Utsi Baker was a most well-known black in Richmond at the time when blacks were lucky to get an obituary in the Richmond News Leader. Baker's death warranted the front page. While whites may have respected Baker, he was feared and despised by the black New African community. People would threaten their kids to get them to behave by saying, I'll send you to Chris Baker, or you better be home before dark, or Chris Baker will get you. And you will wind up in the dissecting room. Utsi says, even more recently, I've interviewed people who know those stories. Not about Chris, but about if you're outside after dark, the Medical College of Virginia might risk being snatched. you might be risk being snatched by the Medical College of Virginia. The boogeyman stories weren't that far off. Baker and his accomplices scoped out cemeteries posing as hunters, hiding in the nearby woods. They showed up at funerals to check out potential bodies. A successful grave robbery took at least 3 to 4 people. Savage says and was tricky to pull off without being detected. After digging out the body, robbers had to transport the corpse over a cemetery fence across town without injury and uninjuring the body. And an uninjured body might net $10, but a damaged one brought considerably loss. There's a whole lot of things to think about when you're robbing a grave, Savage says. In my opinion, the grave robbing is heavily romanticized. It was hard work and risky work. To ward off would-be robbers, families sometimes stood watch during the first few nights after the burial until the body decomposed enough to discourage its theft. Baker found out the consequences of getting caught in 1892 when he and 3 other men were caught disturbing at least 8 graves in the Oakwood Cemetery in Richmond's East End. Baker was indicted on felony and 2 misdemeanor counts of body snatching, but was pardoned by the governor. Shaking my head, man. Even before Utsey began digging around Baker's history, the Medical College dark secrets began surfacing in 1994. While breaking ground on new buildings, a well was uncovered with human remains at the bottom. The Smithsonian concluded the bones belonged to 26 blacks. The bones had surgical incisions on them, meaning that after the students were done with the bodies, they tossed them down the well. Utsey finished shooting and editing his documentary tentatively titled Chris. Utsey says his film would be done in 6 months. This is an old article, by the way, so this film should be already out. It's easy to look at the man called Chris and judge him because he was really the inside man to the black community who provided the medical college access to the bodies. Utsey says it's easy to see him as a pariah, someone who's being manipulated, therefore taking advantage of his own people. But I think it's more complex than that. The end. So as you see, man, that is the connection of the organ harvesting and body snatching of the 1800s and the early 1900s. Man, as you can see, they was using these black cats to steal bodies out of the graves here in Virginia. You see what I'm saying? And they were stealing our ancestors who were hung, who died in slavery, and our ancestors after being freed out of slavery, when the Civil War, they were stealing these bodies and using this cadaver market of black bodies. And they were selling our ancestors for $10, man. How disrespectful is that to ancestors? Even though, you know, our ancestors transitioned and they were no longer in the physical realm, that's still disrespectful to our ancestors, man. So we demand reparations for that, man. That's criminal. That's a crime. And, you know, by me putting this information out here, do research on the slave history in your city and see if you could come up with some more history or see if you can find some more research on cadaver markets across the South in slavery. Because this is, you can say, the origin of organ harvesting. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. Killing our ancestors, taking their bodies, committing, doing scientific experiments on our ancestors, selling their organs, just treating them like nothing, man. Like, I think we demand reparations on that, man. And we need to bring more attention to the cadaver market. And, I'm going to put this link in my bio, if I can, in the bio under this video description so y'all can read it. So I'm going to sign off right there, man. This has been Haki Shakur. This has been a video on the Untold Rebellion of Mingoe and the other suppressed rebellions across Virginia. And the cadaver market, body snatching of black body graves being robbed, man. And to close out this video, like I said, man, sometimes in order to stop the hunt, the hunter must be hunted. And I'm going to just leave y'all with that right there, man. Haki Shakur, the seat of Gabriel Prosser, the seat of Ann Woods. That's a revolutionary marriage. And shout out to Mingoe. Shout out to Nat Turner. Shout out to all our people who fight back, man. We will shoot back. Pamoja Tuta Shinda. Together we will win. Free the land.